What if you move down?
We could. It's just, I'm waiting for it to shut up. I don't know why it's on. Okay, you should be live on YouTube. I'm Kathy Williams, Town Planner. Welcome to the May 16th Drive-In Site Utilization Committee. This is to formally advise that is required to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on June 16th, 2021. The Drive-In Site Utilization Committee will hold a public meeting at the time and date noted on the notice of meetings. Public is welcome to attend either in person or via the remote alternative public access provided on the notice of meetings. I'm going to hand it over to Jim Saban, the chair.
Okay, do I start with a roll call or?
Yeah.
Okay, Susan Britta. Here. Mike Nugent. Here. Steve O'Neill. Here. Rich Bilski. Oh, David Reed.
Present.
I think that's it, and I'm here.
We officially have a quorum and can open the meeting. As I said, I'm Kathy Williams, Town Planner, and we also have Andrew Pichette from Beta online. And maybe Andrew, if you could share the PowerPoint, and I'll give it started off. There we go. Move on to the agenda. So today we're just going to get a little bit more detail about the restroom facilities. We'll look at what we've done to the site plan and what it looks like around the restrooms. We did some minor adjustments to the floor plan, and then we also have some additional elevations to show you guys. Then Andrew's going to go into a little bit more detail with regard to the natural play areas, which we've expanded, got a little bit more detail on that. And then I'll come back to me to talk about the event space operations and layout, and then the Board of Selectmen briefing for May 24th. Go to the next slide, Andrew. So this is kind of just where we've been. Oh, there's come Susan. I'll pause for a moment while she settles in. Can somebody just hand her a packet? Oh, yeah, it's updated. So we're always updating. So we just started, so you didn't miss anything interesting. So this is just our concept plan from back in January, and basically everything has stayed in the same locations. We've just kind of been fine tuning a bunch of things that we'll kind of go over in this meeting. You can go to the next slide, Andrew. Okay. So starting from the left, the kayak launch, that's pretty much as you guys saw in April 4th. We had the layout with the elevation going, the boardwalk going up and over the salt marsh with the gangways going down, and then the floats from our previous meeting. And then another thing that's a little bit different. So that's what you've seen previously. So the other thing that's a little bit different is the pathways that are located next to Parker's River. Eric and I had met with Kelly Grant out on site prior to her leaving to try and see if we could get a little bit closer to the river to really have those river walk views while not staring at the hotel across the way. So we kind of oriented it so as you're walking to the left side of the page or south, you'll get a nice view down river as well as it being in a nice, still slightly wooded area. The artist shanties have been defined a little bit more with some additional grading and some boulders in order to address the grading changes there. But the main, thank goodness, the air conditioner finally kicked off, so we can probably hear each other now. So the three areas we're really going to be talking about today is the natural playscape areas, the restrooms, and the event space. If you could go to the next slide, Andrew. So the charge that the DISEC gave us the last time was improve the restroom aesthetics and consider taking a look at solar. So a couple of things that we've done is we did reorient the building slightly so that one roof side is facing more towards the south. The bottom of the page is towards Route 28. The top of the page is towards the event space, just to orient people. There's three main entrances to the building. The first one is on the left side there, and it goes to the offices. The one on the up side of the page goes to the men's room, and the one on the bottom side with a little bit of a gabled end, that's going to the ladies' room, and has also been combined with the drinking fountain and the water dispenser. We'll see that in more detail as we start taking a look at some of the elevations on the project. There's also 3 ways to get up to the restroom area. You have the 2 stairs that are kind of one's more towards the art shanties areas, the others directed more towards the event space. And then you have on the left there, you have the handicap accessible pathway winding up. We also have some potential for an option for concessions on the, I want to keep saying south, but it's actually the north side of the building right there, if there's some interest in that. And then also on the left side there, there's like a little arch area where there could be like a sitting area or waiting, where people can congregate and wait either for the concessions or for people who are waiting. For them in the restrooms. Those are, I believe the tanks are the underground infiltration chambers for the roof runoff for the restrooms. Is that right, Andrew?
Yeah, that's correct. Those are the Coltec chambers. Yep.
So if you go to the next slide, we can kind of take a quick look at what the old floor plan was on the left side, where we had the office and the mechanical room stays the same. The couple things that switched was the restrooms, for the women's restrooms, the door flipped. So we're having the door on the other side now, which we're then combining with the dispenser and the drinking fountain. Can you show that general area, Andrew? Yeah, right there's going to be the drinking fountain and then the door to the women's room. So that kind of created a main attraction or a focal point for it. And we have a gable end with a canopy over it. And that's the side of the building that's going to actually be what you see first. So we move the door to the mechanical room on the other side. I think when we start moving forward and taking a look at some of the elevations, I think that clearly gives you a clear idea of how that looks significantly different than what we had before. So starting from left to right, there's a little bracketed overhang for the door to the office area. We have triple windows here to help balance and could also serve as some of the concession windows in the future. We have a cupola that we've added to the top there, along with a hip roof to kind of bring down some of that mass of the roofing. And then on the right end, we have the women's restroom and the drinking fountain with the water dispenser. And then we have the gable end kind of porch, bringing a little bit more emphasis to that on the right side of the property or the building. This is the east elevation. This is the one that you'll be viewing from the shanties. So you can see on the right, the gable end where the restroom, women's room, and the drinking fountain is. And then we have just a little covering over the entrance door to the office area.
Is that where the potential for concessions is? Outside?
It would be on the other
On the
side.
other side?
The first right there with the triple windows, I
Okay,
think would
got
kind of be a location where you could potentially do that. We've added a sink, I believe has been added into the office space, but nothing really has been done to try and accommodate concessions at this time. I don't think that was the main emphasis, but we want to make as much flexibility as possible in the future to do things that we're looking for. So if you could go down, yep. And then this would be looking at it from the event space. You have a little overhang over the men's room. We didn't really want to emphasize the door to the mechanical room, so it's left a little bit plain. And then the next elevation is basically, in a sense, the rear elevation. This would be where the mechanical room is, so you can't do a significant amount, but maybe see if we couldn't add some windows so it's not a completely blank wall. If we can't do that because of the things that are happening in the mechanical room, we could probably do something to embellish it with some type of vegetation.
Could you take that mechanical room door and swing it to the side? And
You could do that, sure.
then if you needed to offset, I mean, I'm not an architect, so I don't know if it'd look any different.
I don't know whether it would look significantly different, and then I don't know whether it would.
The functionality of the
Yeah.
mechanical room.
Yeah, it's a little bit about what's going on inside and how much wall space they need. But that's an interesting idea that Jim had, Andrew, is maybe having the door on an end like that versus.
Have the door in the mechanical room open on the gable end instead of, so when you're looking at the building from the event space, you only see one door versus two.
Sure. Yeah, no, we can certainly explore that. I think what's driving the door location right now is just the location of where the utilities are coming in, which is primarily from the north and the west. We have the electrical coming in, and then the sewer and water coming in and going out as well. So, this width here does provide the opportunity to bring all of that in on sort of one, Kathy alluded to sort of uniform wall that we might utilize in here to be able to mount the utilities, but we can certainly explore if it was desirable to have that one door on this side, rotating the door around and getting some of the utilities into this wall.
Yeah, obviously, when you do that, now you've got to think about the balance of that look. So if you take that door out of there, you got to figure out your balance on that side again. So it might be better just leave it as it is, but just a thought. Or get rid of the water and put it in where the water fountain is. Go into the mechanics room there.
Well, that's where it was previously. I think the idea.
Under the coop, where the water disposed of.
I think the idea was to try and emphasize the view that would be seen first from Route 28, and then making sure that people can see the drinking fountain as well.
Hey.
Balance. It's balanced out the way it is right there.
Yeah. I'm fine with it. I'm not going to lose and sleep over the minor details. Yeah, thank you for dressing it up. That
Significantly better.
Yeah.
I'm confused on what the alternate C.
That was just, maybe if we can just take a quick look at alternate C. That was just another rendition. We really had kind of settled on the hip roof and the one that we just gone through. We really liked that. But Eric had also done up a couple other ones with a more traditional roof style without the hip. I think it shows a lot of roof and it's not quite as proportional as the other one, but we just wanted, he had done a lot of work on coming up with different options and we just wanted to show that in case you guys had any interest in that one.
And all of these alternatives are associated with solar panels, correct?
Yes, yep. You'd have the southern orientation. It's been rotated to allow for that. It's not proposing to have solar on it now, but what we wanted to do is make sure it's orientated correctly.
so. South elevation, south. Facing the.
That's really kind of looking more towards the shanties. It's actually probably the east elevation.
Would be east, right? Kind of 6 of one, half dozen the other.
I think the hip roof really brings it down and makes it more proportional. And I do think flipping it and having the gable end for the cover being on the other side really brings it a little bit more in proportion.
Yep.
Yeah. It's all about, architecture is all about proportion. I can tell you what doesn't look right, but I can't tell you why or how to fix it. But when you see it, it looks right. You kind of, everyone kind of knows.
Isn't that the definition of something else too? You can't define it, but you know it. when you
Community
see it.
character. No, community character.
That too.
So it sounds like everyone is comfortable with the first option with the hip roof, and maybe we'll continue pursuing that. That's
Please
great.
proceed.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Good
One
job.
thing checked.
Good job.
Yeah, Eric did a great job doing these quick sketches. I say quick, and I'm sure they were quick, but they helped enormously to try and take a look at the proportions and the different options and the different elements. So he did a great job on that. So I think the next thing up is taking a look at the natural playscape area. And I'm going to let Andrew take over and talk about this.
Sure. Thanks, Kathy. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Good. Okay. So again, as we started to refine the paths on the eastern side along the river, we really started carving out what we started calling rooms that are along the parking area. So again, we have what we're referring to as room 1. Room 2, which is sort of centrally located, is where we've talked about locating the play area. So just using this plan to show you some context as to where that's located in terms of the rest of the site elements that we were just looking at. And taking a closer look at the play area, again, as we started taking a closer look at the grading, what we've realized is that we do have some grade to be able to play with and to use to our advantage. So what we're trying to do here is really try to emphasize the change in grade and utilize that to create some interesting spaces. The main space that you see here in sort of this tan brown color is proposed as wood fiber mulch, and I think the surface of that could be fairly flexible, but the intent would be to introduce some natural play elements, so things like timber balance beams. We'll see on the next sheet some precedent images of those. Proposing a play tunnel, again utilizing some of the grade in here to create a berm and to provide an access for somebody to crawl through or to sort of utilize this mound as play. And then on the right side of the sheet over here, looking at, again, utilizing the grade to bring somebody up an accessible path, again, utilizing the similar stabilized aggregate material that we're using on the rest of the walkways to get them up to sort of a higher, and when I say higher, maybe 4 or 5 feet up higher than the wood fiber mulch below, and to introduce some sort of a landslide element that might be able to be incorporated into the grade. So I've incorporated the some of the contours in here so you can see those elevational changes. And again, really trying to focus on trying to find some play elements that can really just be well incorporated into the space. We're seeing a lot more of these more and more frequently, realizing that kids play extremely well in nature. They imagine really well in nature, and they relate really well to these natural play elements. So the idea is to create these flexible spaces that are dynamic and not really unique to specific age ranges, but really are more for them to create the different play and kind of have it be a dynamic element. On the sort of upper part of the sheet over to the west, we're proposing some picnic tables, again, an accessible picnic table off of the accessible pathway, and looking at this as an opportunity for any parents who are here with their kids to be able to sort of park and to be able to overlook the play area. And again, just trying to tie this into the adjacent lawn space. To the top left, we're showing what we're calling a track slider. The concept is sort of like almost like a zip line, but more of a fixed situation. And again, just thinking about materials, utilizing just the same planting elements that we've used on the rest of the site, introducing boulders to be able to start to parcel these spaces out, and to tie those into the natural play areas.
Andrew, can you talk to us about the material that's used in the log area?
Sure. Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll just hop over to the next slide here and just show you some of these images. These pictures that I'm showing you here are from a company called Earthscape. So what they use for these timbers are actually in this region, they use locust, which is naturally rot resistant. In other regions, they'll use the different types of material. But again, trying to use organic and clean and not treated timber elements.
You're talking about
What about the ground cover?
The base, yeah.
Oh, the ground cover. Sorry, I thought you said the wood. Yeah.
In the
So, yep.
the
So
brown area.
Yeah, right. So the brown area are those timber logs that we're proposing. And the green areas, the planting beds, what we propose are just, we wouldn't want to obscure any line of sight or present any security issues. We just propose some low ground cover, again, to be able to blend these grades where we do steepen up the grade a little bit, just to be able to vegetate that and not have that service lawn per se. But again, we would just propose some low growing, ferns or native grasses, smaller shrubs, nothing oversized.
So Andrew, the proposed wood fiber mulch,
Wood fiber mulch. Yep.
explain that to me if you could, please.
Yep.
Is
So
that a rubber? Oh,
it is not. It's a natural wood product. And it's one of there's only a few surfaces that meet what's known as the CPSC, like playground requirements. So it's a natural wood mulch material that would meet the fall requirements needed for a playground.
So my concern, I guess, is one, maybe not, runoff. Would that run off, I mean, wood floats, would that run into the water? We have an issue with that somehow? Or
Is
is
it
it,
compact, Andrew?
It does compact, and if you see any displacement, it would be fairly minor. You know, a lot of times, some of the reasons that you know communities stray away from the wood fiber mulch is that you might see it kicked up on the side of a path. I've never seen it run off in any significant manner that we'd have concerns about it flowing into the river.
Are you
But
more
I-
concerned about the tides coming up in an elevated flood situation?
No, a couple things. I mean, if you look at the topographies, everything goes down into that. It's like a little pit, kind of, if you will. So water's gonna go into that. I'm concerned that the water's just gonna run off and take it with it into the river.
Yeah, and we could look more closely at the grades in here, and we would find some isolated low points to be able to move that water. I do see what you're saying about the fact that this is a low spot, but I don't have any major concern about a huge amount of water collecting in this area.
Okay,
The parking's porous pavement, so you're not gonna really have runoff like you would a regular
Right,
traditional
right.
pavement.
but if you look at the topographies on the greens, everything,
Yeah.
I love the concept. I think it's great. I just want to make sure that that stuff's not gonna wash into the river.
I think your comment, I was thinking the other way around, it's not surface runoff, but more like the tide coming in. I think this is, what elevation is this? Is it 5 or 6?
It's elevations, 5.5, 6. Yep.
Yeah. So the base flood elevation there is probably in that area like 12 or something. So
Right.
I would be more concerned, if we had a big flood event, what would happen with that, all of that material? Because I mean, we're in a floodplain, so everything needs to be anchored. We certainly don't want to create a material that's gonna then float away.
Right, that's
I
kind of,
hadn't thought about that at all. You asked the question.
So can we look at a rubberized material that may be secured so it doesn't run off at all, but does achieve the same wall requirements?
Yeah, we
Mhm.
definitely could. There's a cost associated with that. Wood fiber mulch is definitely a less expensive product, but the poured in place rubberized surfacing is certainly an option.
I'm certainly fine with the wood fiber mulches. The Conservation Commission is fine with it, and all of our regulatory people. I mean, they're the experts on it, so, but again, considering costs, if it works that way, then they're good with it, then I'm good with it.
Is that material generally acceptable by conservation commissions? In a location like this?
It is, and that's something that, as we're looking more closely at the stormwater, all these questions are great questions that we can really just hone in on and look at more closely. But the wood fiber mulch is not a treated product. It's not. There's no. There are no chemical products involved in it. So I see no reason why conservation commissions would have any issue with it. We've never had any questions from a conservation commission standpoint in the past.
Works with me.
Jim, I also think the wood fiber, it's heat better than rubberized. I think it puts it a little bit cooler.
Yeah, because I've walked on those rubber ones sometimes, and it's like, they get a little,
It absorbs the heat.
Yeah,
Sounds fine, as
the-
long as, right?
As long as it,
Yeah.
we get assurances that they.
the rubber is certainly there's less maintenance involved with it over the course of time. Obviously, it's a more permanent product, whereas this might have some maintenance associated with it in terms of maybe some reapplication if it overly compacts, raking it out, sort of smoothing it out if you've got kids playing on it aggressively. But in terms of a product that does meet CPSC and does again provide that natural aesthetic that I think we're looking for, I think it's a nice option.
Is it what we're looking at in the pictures on the next page? Is that roughly the same product up the left?
This is, yeah, and I'm not sure exactly where this. I can get more information on where this was installed. This is a little bit darker than some of the products that we've specified in the past. Like maybe you can see on this image here, it's just a little bit lighter, has more of that kind of natural, almost like a natural pine bark mulch look to it.
Something like that.
Correct. Yep.
I think one of the things that, as we're moving forward, we've been certainly getting input from a bunch of different town staff, but I think this is a good point. Once we get to a certain point after the Board of Selectmen briefing, is to meet with the Recreation Commission. I know that they've been very involved with accessible playgrounds, and we would certainly want to have their input. I'm sure the Board of Selectmen would want to have their input.
All
I
right.
think we're kind of now at a good point to start having that conversation.
Okay, next. Anything else? No.
So I think this isn't all that dissimilar from things that you've seen before with regard to a potential event space layout. Obviously, the parking is in the, I'm going to say, upper side of the diagram. It's all going to be on the grass. You still have your emergency access off of Portland Way. You'd have the circles all the way around the perimeter of the event space for the fire department in order to get access to it. There would be different perimeter lighting. I think we might need to add a little bit more perimeter lighting, Andrew, as we talk about it a little bit. There's some shown in the parking, but we might want to have some a little bit more along the edges of the event space itself. We would be bringing in, I believe, the water and the electrical would all be coming off of Portland Way. I believe there's a utility pole that we would then be going underground. This might be something Andrew might be able to provide a little bit more detail on, but I believe it's all going into the mechanical room in the restrooms, and then it would be dispersed from there. There would be a main location where the portable stage would go, and they probably have one somewhat near the restrooms as well. But underground, you can see there's some food trucks kind of shown. Those could be food trucks, different vendors that would need some type of electrical and water. So we're kind of having like a loop of electrical and water going around that open event space area. And there would also be Wi-Fi would be within the restroom. So the different vendors would have access to that Wi-Fi for their sales.
What is the difference between alternative 2 and alternative 1?
I don't think it ended up, can you go to the next slide?
Just that there's no event space.
Yeah, it didn't, can you go to the next slide? It didn't really change that much. It was kind of like, okay, in the center there, you could do all kinds of things. You could have your arts and crafts fair, you could have your pirate festival there, your carnival, a boat show, a car show. A lot of stuff could happen in the center there and still be accommodated. So it kind of worked out fairly nicely about how it all kind of laid out. You know, depending on the amount of parking or the type of event, they may not need that much on-site parking. So maybe we might want to see if we want to have another row of electrical and water further up. But the general concept seemed to work fairly well. And you had a lot of different opportunities and locations for accessing food trucks, which I think, you know, having that food truck caravan, it would be a wonderful idea at that particular site.
Is that an accurate number for the portable restrooms?
No, I mean, every event would have to be determined by the health department, how many portable toilets they
Okay,
would
but
need.
is that the preferred location?
I don't think it's necessarily a preferred location. It's just kind of identifying a potential location.
Okay.
The likelihood that you would have this many food trucks, except for at an actual food truck caravan,
Festival, yeah.
is very unlikely. So there may be certain areas like, if you can go back to the previous slide, you know, there might be a VIP area. Which is just something that's typical happens when you have some type of performance event, and they might have their own special restrooms that they can use. It's really going to be a little bit up to the event organizers as to how they want to lay out all of those types of things. We just want to be sure that we're giving them enough infrastructure in the right locations for them to tap into, so that it's not causing them any difficulties. I also think that now we might be at a good point to reach out to more event organizers
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
and kind of vet some of this a little bit more closely with them to see if this is something that would work for them, or whether they have any suggestions or different ideas.
We met with an event organizer before, the gentleman, I guess, from Canada, was he?
Yes.
Didn't he say that some events like to have a separate area where they can pull up their trailers and things?
Yeah, I think, I mean, what we're showing there is the portable stage.
Yeah.
That might get moved further to the right a little bit, because they might have their own RVs or whatever for the
Right, just
performers and that type of stuff that usually gets done behind the stage or next to the stage.
So there'll be power at that loop.
There'll be power at that loop. And whether we want to have some type of power or something in the kind of parking area, that's something that's worth discussing.
The orientation of the stage here that you have in the audience, that's consistent with the sound engineering.
That should be the
style?
10 degrees off north, right, Andrew?
Perfect.
That is, yep. I think it's a little offsetting just because we're rotated from true north right now. North is sort of diagonal to the bottom right of the sheet right now, but that is true to 10 degrees. Yep.
Anybody got any questions? Nope, go ahead. Next.
I like it.
Wait, what?
You didn't need to make any decisions between the two layouts, they're basically just.
This is kind of, yeah, it's not significantly different. I think it's just kind of showing you that there's a large area in the center that can be used for exactly. I think we'll get a little bit more tweaking from different event sponsors. We did speak to the Pirate Festival gentleman who recently came. He wants to use the drive-in site this summer, and he had some interesting ideas that maybe we want to see if we can make sure we have electrical in some right places for some future ideas. Yeah. We don't want to put in too much infrastructure, but we don't want to rip up something later if we can put it in. If we can put it in now.
Compliments to you guys for doing that. That's a good action.
Now, tracking too much from the, you mentioned we have some things interested in this summer. What's,
I'm going to hand it over to Kyle because he's been dealing with the different.
Did we put out an RFP to use the site?
Yeah, we put out a solicitation like we did last summer.
Just, I guess my first question is, how come we didn't know about that? I mean, we are the drive-in site utilization committee. I would
It's probably my fault. Yeah.
expect that we should be told that the site is being made available.
It's probably my fault. You probably let us know in one of our CPC meetings. Being the person that's on this committee and that committee, I'll take it.
I probably should have sent out an email as well, so we can tag team the.
Consider this a notification.
A little bit late.
Well,
And I don't want to say that I'm annoyed, but I wasn't happy that we're finding out after the fact that the site is being proposed for utilization.
that was always.
Always the case,
That was
yeah.
always the case. I guess that's why I didn't think of it, because I thought that was kind of always the plan. We did it last year and our direction was to continue doing it.
when did it go?
Went out 2 months ago, I want to say. Or
What was the response?
We got 2 proposals. We got Kid Cut Fire Festival, which we already knew about, was June, June 4th and 5th and 10th and 11th. And then there's also the carnival that took place last summer.
Same time frame?
August.
What was the first one, Carl?
Cape Cod Fire Festival, which they had last year at School Island. I think it was.
Yep, Nick and Noel's property, yeah.
And so they're
Big deal,
We made a little money.
big deal.
Community service.
A pirate festival?
It's New Latitude Event Solutions is the company.
And what's the dates for that?
June, I think it's,
First 2 weekends in June.
yeah, first 2 weekends.
Okay. Okay,
And it actually got a tourism.
Nothing else.
Had one inquiry.
Yeah, we've gotten some, and like, I just got interest from a guy today who wants to do a fundraiser, but I don't think it's gonna be a big community event. We had interest from a gentleman who wants to do some sort of music festival, but he wants to do it in 2023. And that's a question of whether or not the space should be available.
yeah, I'm hoping we've got shovels in the ground in 2023. Otherwise, I quit.
Oh, come on. How many decades did the Marina group go for?
We're better than that.
Those are fortitude. Andrew, can you go back up for 1 second? I just wanted to talk about, one of the things that we have been talking about, we have had a couple meetings with Carl Van Holm, the Division of Natural Resources, because he is retiring this month. So we've been tapping into him and got some great information on the kayak launch from him and Bill Benetti. But one of the things that was brought up by him was cameras on the site. I kind of wanted to bring it up with you guys. Security. He was interested in having in two kind of, we had talked about 2 different locations. He was more interested in, if we're adding additional kayak activity to the river, maybe we want to have cameras that can look down river and up. And then the other idea was mounting 2 cameras on the restrooms themselves, one that would kind of show the event space, and then one that might show the artist shanties in the parking lot and the Playscape area. It might be something that we just install the capacity for it now and not necessarily do, but we haven't really broached this in quite some time, and I wanted to bring it up with the group.
My suggestion is, I like the idea. My suggestion is that a meeting with either Kevin Lennon or Frank Frederickson, or I'm not sure who over there, but at the YPD, they may have some suggestions of placing and that type of thing.
Or how effective they
Yeah,
are.
I think it's a pretty good idea.
No, I think it's great.
If they're not that effective, they're
Yeah.
expensive to maintain. That's the
Are they at Packet Landing? So there we go.
Yeah, there's one, and he has a bunch of them and he can see them. Carl can see them in his office, and they're all, with regard to the natural resource areas and the boat launches.
And smugglers. has
And,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they're relatively unobtrusive, but the problem is making sure if it's Wi-Fi, does it have the capacity? How tall does it need to be to connect to the correct location? So we got some information from him on the person who does it for the town. So we're gonna find out a little bit more information, but it sounds like
idea.
you guys would be interested.
I'm in favor.
Yeah, me too.
Anybody opposed?
You can always put them on that 110-foot tower that's gonna be going on.
See, that's, yeah, you'll probably
What?
be able to see this site. from
What
there.
tower?
Someone releasing to Verizon, right?
Yeah, that was the other thing is that, we didn't want it to be something that's really tall and intrusive, so we wanted to keep it something relatively small. So that needs to be a little bit more work, but it could always be hardwired as well. So that's another thing to think about. But it
What?
sounds like,
Okay, Vision Active.
I'm just saying, it sounds like you were in support in general.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
One of the things we talked about earlier, very early, was having a location where there would be like a big map. And customer or tourist information booth or stand of some kind. Do we have any idea where that might fit in?
Could it be something that could end up getting mounted to the restroom or?
Yeah, we've,
Map of the site, or is it a map?
No, I was thinking
This
of
is
map of
town.
town. Hey, again, okay, if you want to get from this point to someplace, how you gonna
We had-
get there?
We did talk about.
I think that would be
On
important.
the
Well,
site,
if you go,
Particularly if it's going to be known where other locations in Yarmouth.
it'd be outside, yeah.
yeah, you could put a big map on the wall, on the gable end.
On the outside of the building. Especially when you go around, as Jim suggested, you have that whole wall there.
That's
And it would
interesting.
have to include bike paths, because if we get people into the driving site by bike, we want them to be able to continue.
We need to know how to get to the beach, to the
Right,
hospital,
yeah.
to the recreation department, or the restaurants, highways, exits.
So maybe a conversation with Mary Vilbon and the chamber, if I know they've got a couple of big maps that they put up, maybe they, get the chamber to sponsor it, or an individual company. I'm all for
We
public,
did just apply for a grant for wayfinding signage.
for what?
the town, wayfinding signage for the town, which is kind of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So we're looking at putting it in some other locations around town, so we do, if that comes to fruition,
That's
obviously
true.
we could look into having this.
Yeah, and there was a bunch of different ideas, and one was more of a more detailed kiosk. Some of them were just, kind of signs on posts, but I think this might be a good spot for something more elaborate. It's a good point.
Just an FYI, Conde Nast just did a big article on the hidden treasures of the Cape.
Who did?
Oh, really?
Conde Nast.
The big travel
And,
magazine.
yeah, and in the midsection of the Cape is a hidden treasure, and in the hidden treasure was Yarmouth. Was the town of Yarmouth.
Well, there goes our hidden treasure in this.
Well,
Now
yeah,
everybody
I
knows.
thought that too, until I read the article. They've mentioned Yarmouth, Hyannis, I forget the other two towns, and they did a little something on every town except Yarmouth.
Good.
But we were included in the cluster.
It's like when the Herald puts in the list of free beaches.
No, but they did talk
What are you
about- They did talk about all the restaurants there, so that.
So on this same subject, though, when do we want to start thinking about those informational boards, even on the boardwalk, or even some spots along in here where we could use the nature walk type?
Yeah, I think there's actually some
Yeah, they're just-
locations that we've been talking about.
You understand what I'm
Obviously,
talking about, right?
one next to the kayak launch, to talk about the kayak, rules,
Kayak safety.
kayak safety. One is you get closer to Upweather to kind of explain what that structure is and what happens there.
Yep, that'd be a good one there.
And as well as, we do need to have some type of information board. which would be good, I think, to mount it, if we can, maybe onto the side of the building. And then obviously some type of interpretive signage on the boardwalk itself in order to be able to highlight some of the beauty of what everyone is seeing.
Yeah, because when we go out onto the marsh, you want to have boards that would show like a breakup of what the marsh looks like, how it's laid out. Maybe an osprey nest and what an osprey is and what goes into a nest. Part of the idea of the boardwalk is to take advantage of Mother Nature's educational opportunities that we can even use for our school kids and stuff. So,
Yes, definitely.
so I don't know if we do that with, feedback from natural resources or where we get the data on that stuff, but I think those are things that we need to put into the plan of
I think
preparing
in our
data.
contract with Beta, we have a certain number of signs.
Yeah,
And then expect them to develop the content.
Yeah, we do have graphic panels. You can see those. They're pretty tiny here, but they're highlighted as asterisks. And again, the locations that Kathy highlighted are all those unique sort of educational opportunities or wayfinding opportunities, at the edge of the trail, at the kayak launch, even as you approach the trails closer to Parker's River. And I think that we had discussed some sort of a sort of wayfinding, a panel or sign at the sort of crossroads here that would direct you around the park itself. And
Site
then,
map?
yeah, right, correct, yep. And then again, something at the restroom, where if folks were going to meet at the restroom, that there'd be an opportunity. We've sort of carved out a space for that to provide a locus map to show sort of what's what and how to get where you want to get to from the restroom.
Great. That's way ahead of us. Okay, next.
So in your packets was a draft little memo to the Board of Selectmen. It's really just kind of, it's a very brief update of working with Beta and a bunch of town staff. The main emphasis is going to be PowerPoint presentation that Andrew and I are going to be working on for the next couple days. It needs to be submitted to the Board of Selectmen, the Town Administrator's Office by noon on Thursday. So we would take the latest layout that you saw and kind of have that as a colored rendering. And then I would, at the meeting, kind of go and give a presentation overview of the site and then kind of get into a little bit more emphasis on certain detailed areas like the restrooms. So we have a couple pictures of the elevations and the nice site plan that Andrew had worked out. Again, same thing with the natural display areas and event space. We're kind of do the same thing for the artist shanties, the kayak launch. We have all of that information from previous PowerPoint presentations. Really the same thing with the boardwalk. With the planned layout, we'll be looking at the different profiles and sections, the lookouts, the seating area, the different railing types that we're looking at, the vertical wood along with the cable in certain locations. And then also we've processed the change order and Beta and GEI are working on that analysis for the boardwalk support system, but it's not done yet. We have for this meeting or for the Board of Selectmen. But what we'll do is we'll show the different alternatives and what we're looking at and why we're looking at the different ones with regard to constructability, their cost, longevity, maintenance, and those different types of things that we're looking at before we make a recommendation on that. And then just kind of briefly going over the permitting and then the project costs. It's a little difficult. I think we need to emphasize to the board that it's difficult to come up with cost estimates right now due to the volatility in things as well as actually material availability, fuel costs, et cetera, et cetera. But we kind of identified what we had before and that we're working on that 30% cost estimate, or Babe's working on that 30% cost estimate. I would like to emphasize that I think we should ask for more CPA funding. It's really hard to be moving forward with the design and permitting of this and keeping things going and then also looking for money. CPA has some money that's available. They've generously, the town's voted 3.7 million. You might want to ask for another couple million. I don't know. We're going to have to really take a look and see what we get on the cost. We do have some potentials for some other grants that are out there. But every grant comes with its own set of rules. And that's the part that's so complicated with a project like this. We already have 2 grants, the Seaport grant, the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, and they all come with, you can use it here, but you can't use it there. And it becomes much more difficult when you have a lot of those of managing it, how you ultimately construct it, break it down, and do the invoicing for it, or pay requests for it with the contractor. So we're trying to keep, we don't want a lot of, we certainly don't want a lot of little grants, like
No.
$200,000, $250, that's really, really, really hard to manage without a full-time grant manager, which we don't have. The other thing is the schedule. Hopefully we work a little bit more on trying to update the schedule. We are behind schedule. We were hoping to be starting permitting now, not a little bit earlier. So this may be something, instead of starting construction before next summer, we may not start construction until after next summer. That's an important distinction to make. We need to try and find out that answer, because whether we can open up for solicitation for next year or whether we're shutting it
Which we
down.
will let you know about.
Thank you. So that we can make plans for things like this.
Or whether, we certainly don't want to have a shutdown for 2 summers. So we do need to work a little bit more on getting the updated schedule. It's a little difficult because a lot of this is environmental permitting. I don't know if any of you are familiar with environmental permitting. It could take forever, or it could take a relatively short period of time. It depends on function of how many questions they have or issues that get identified. I think the first one, permit to go in will probably be the environmental notification form. And I think that they're starting to work on that, but we really need to know that structural support system for the boardwalk in order to be able to move forward with that. And I have been talking to Carl about a potential grant for, I thought about it, for the kayak. He said good luck getting some grant funding for those access to water type structures, especially if they're handicap accessible, that type of thing. So we have a couple ideas of different funding, but for the Board of Selectmen, they want, anytime you apply for CPA funds on town land, they want, give their permission. So I'm thinking maybe this is a good time to just kind of say, well, and we'll probably be looking for another, yes. And then the other thing has to do with, the other ask has to do with naming of the park.
Yes.
I know we've kind of touched on it a few times about commercial funding and so on. Would we entertain the idea of, like, somebody wanted to pay for the playground, they could put a small sign there, or they want to pay for the kayak ramp, they want to put a small company sign?
I think that's probably part of the discussion with the Board of Selectmen. They're the ones who decide. You guys can make a recommendation.
Kind of like the islands, the street islands were sponsored by Joe
Yeah,
Smith
it's a
Landscaping.
lot more expensive, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that concept
Yeah.
of naming things.
I mean, that's kind
Plus,
of the
there's no
way,
cost to do an island.
Yeah, but
Could be a
no,
a small additional fee to do a playground.
I'm a big fan of public-private. If we can, I mean, without getting crazy, like, the sponsor of everything all over them,
No.
with some discretion, I think public-private funding of some parts of this should be something we should investigate.
Yeah, I mean, you know how well that, I'm sorry, you know how well that worked for the Sean Gannon training facility. I mean, we had private donors, we had corporate
Yeah.
donors, we had in-kind contributions of lumber, wood.
I think the way it's been left in the memo was that, instead of saying specifically a naming contest, that the committee would solicit names and offer recommendations to the Board of Selectmen for their consideration, or the board may wish to preserve naming rights for the park or for certain components within the park. So I think that will open up that discussion with the board, and they can kind of decide. I think if they want to start doing more of this public-private, it's probably going to require some type of policy update on the Board of Selectmen's part.
I think if we don't get to a name of it pretty soon, people are gonna name it on their own. I heard the pirate guys call it the fairgrounds, and I'm thinking, fairgrounds?
Thank
We
you.
don't have fairgrounds. So, you know what I mean? So people are gonna start coming up with a name if we don't get on our game and come up with a name.
Well, for a lot of people, so there's that too.
We already have a room at the cultural center, so we can't name the statement.
No, I one room is enough. But a whole park? No.
So that will probably open that discussion, not end it. I mean, the likelihood of them coming to some actual resolution on that meeting is.
We're looking at 5 or 6 million.
Yeah,
That's
the thing I'm worried about.
We don't want the tail wagging the dog. That I can get it controversial. Let's get the project done first.
Yeah.
We can see it,
And that,
enjoy it.
and that's
Plus,
the
then
other,
we have to make sure it's commemorative, not memorial.
Yes.
It's still alive.
This is true. I don't know, the way it's going, I might be dead by the time this is done.
that's another thing to think about is, depending on how much funding we have, we may have like a base bid for the project that we can construct. And there might be these other elements that get added on later and we bite them off as smaller projects and then could maybe be more of a public-private partnership. So
That's what we do with the training facility, there's 4 phases.
I'm more concerned about getting the skeleton in,
Yeah.
the bones, and then we can embellish.
Yeah, once you get that started,
Yeah.
then there's more momentum.
I'd like to get.
And I
get it
will
all
tell you
permitted
that-
So we can, keep extending the permits until we get it all constructed.
And that's easier, and I'll tell you from personal experience that once somebody could see the cultural center actually open, they were more willing to write us checks than when we would
Get the
say,
project done and they can see.
their comments would be, are you crazy? And now they say, how can we help?
Yeah.
Because they,
They can see it.
it's like a house, you can sell a house a lot harder than selling a home, right? All the furniture in it, everybody can see everything, oh, it makes sense, I'll buy this house. Room this big, will my couch fit in here? Right? When they see it, they can,
Yep. So we can stage the part.
yeah, we can stage the park. Get big signs up. This is what it would look like if-
At the end of it, this is where the stage will be.
So just to move this on, the project costs and funding, are you going to include in the memo to the board our calendar of progress that shows where we're at?
I'm hoping to include it something in the PowerPoint,
Okay,
which I want to include with the memo.
just so they know where we're at.
I do, but we need to edit what we have. We don't have a good handle on it. I know Eric said he was going to try and talk to Laura, who's doing a lot of the environmental permitting to kind of get it. But again, there will be an estimate.
Okay.
But I think we're at least 4 months.
Okay,
Yeah, but having that PERD chart, that really is a lot of credibility.
It does.
helps. Yep. Yep. So I guess that's the big coloring the site plan and then the schedule are kind of the big holes, I think, Andrew. And then we can talk offline about sending me different PowerPoint presentations for me to cut and paste.
Sure thing. Yep.
We are behind schedule is the good reason why we are.
Yeah.
It was that extensive discussion we had about the boardwalk, the materials.
yeah, we're trying to get it right.
And it evolved constantly. We got new fresh information almost every time we met. And it was valuable and the committee decided it was worth examining. It wasn't like we didn't meet or any of that
Right.
stuff. We were meeting and the information was extremely important and valuable.
I did try to emphasize that in my memo because you're absolutely right. It's a unique venue for the entire Cape Cod in a very unique setting. And we want to make sure there's a bunch of different regulatory requirements, building code requirements, and that we get everything right. So we're
Yeah,
getting
and that
this
is the
done.
jewel of the film. That's boardwalk is the jewel of the film. All we gotta keep them up.
These meetings have all been open.
Yes, all public meetings.
Yeah.
And I've been making a point of, when I do the minutes, I'm actually attaching all of the packet materials. So if somebody looks at the minutes, they can see all the attachments.
So your draft ends at here, right? This,
That's my draft.
okay, this happens to be the
It
minutes.
just happens to be the
Okay.
meeting minutes.
I was like, wait a minute, what? Are we sending them our minutes? No. All right, okay, good. Then let me go to the minutes and I'll take a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
So move.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Roll call. Bud,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
David,
Yes.
Susan?
Aye.
Me? Yes. Rich is not here. I don't think, is he? Is anybody here? So nobody's looking to add a comment anywhere on, there's no online people.
Can you stop sharing?
There's only 2 participants.
I know, that's what I
Okay.
saw. That's why I looked quickly and said, two, I think we're okay.
Okay, good.
I could never make-
Just want to make sure we're not letting anybody,
Andrew, is that the marshland that's behind you there?
It is. Yeah.
Nice job.
Trying to stoke some inspiration.
so, you could have just driven down the street. You didn't have to stand over there at the marsh. You could have come joined us.
Hey, I'd love to be out there right now instead of here in Rhode Island. I wish I could have joined you guys in person today.
Well, it's a pretty nice day. Anything else for Andrew? Andrew, you have anything else to add to us? Anybody? Okay,
So who's coming to the Board of Selectmen meeting?
What is the date, the 24th?
24th next Tuesday.
I will be there.
I just want to know if I need to post a meeting or not. We've been told that if we post a meeting, even if we don't have quorum, we still have to do minutes.
What time, 6?
It starts at 6. I don't know when we'll be on the agenda. I'll know more information. You don't have to tell me now, but why don't you just send me a,
Definitely maybe.
I just want to make sure he's going to be there next to me.
Yes. And what day is that?
Tuesday,
The 24th?
the 24th.
The last day of long hair.
Oh, that's right.
It's a week from tomorrow.
The 25th.
A week from tomorrow. is-
My grandsons and I are having a hair growing contest because they saw my high school yearbook and said that I couldn't grow my hair long like that now because I'm old and my hair would fall out first.
They should have known better.
So
Follow the science.
they're 10. So I said, yes, I would. And they said, you want to bet? And I said, okay, what's the bet? Who can grow their hair longest between now and May 25th, which
So
is,
what'd you pick?
that's my oldest, I didn't, the boys did. That's my oldest granddaughter's birthday.
Okay.
She'll be 18, so.
Using a ruler or just kind of a impression thing?
Well, my oldest daughter's a hairstylist and she has become the official measurer.
Judge.
And she called me the other day to say, Dad, Julian doesn't want to get his hair cut. And his hair is just this big. I'm like, yeah, so don't cut his hair. He doesn't have to get it cut to be part of the measurement process.
All right, on that note.
So I can't wait till the 25th.
Shouldn't we have adjourned?
Yeah.
We could. Well, that's part of the minutes. That's next week's minutes. So, that's it. Anything else? Motion to adjourn? You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we're done.
Kathy, thank you so much for all your work on
Oh, yeah.
this.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, all right.
Be in touch.